Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Revenge is Ice Cream. First up today we have Revenge on a Professor Who Tried to Illegitimately Fail Me by Sympathy Big 628. Back when I was a grad student, there was a professor who taught us programming. His ego was the size of a volcano. The first couple of lectures, instead of teaching us programming, he showed us a PPT of his achievements. To this day, I have no idea why he didn't like me. For some context, the university I attend requires you to attend at least 80% of the classes, and for you to be able to appear for the final exams, so for obvious reasons, I really cared about the attendance. A month later, we got our attendance report, and I was marked absent for almost all the classes which I attended. I went to the professor's chambers and tried to ask him if there was an error, and requested him to fix it. He said he didn't give me the attendance because he thought that I hadn't learned enough in his class, and told me that he will ask me some questions and determine if I deserve the attendance. That's not how that works, you massive jizrag. He also told me that I was required to carry a notebook with a summary of all his lectures. We weren't required to take any notes other than what we decided on an individual level. Of course, he decided that I didn't deserve the attendance. I went back and decided to write an email to the university authority informing them about the situation and how I deserved the attendance because, well, you were there, because it was written down in the student rule book. The student rule book was a rather useless book that they give you before you start your course, and it has basic rules like don't drink or smoke in class, respect the authorities, and stuff like that. Nobody reads that book, but for some reason I did. And the rule for attendance was that even if I was late to class by 15 minutes, I would still get full attendance for that class. I highlighted this in the email, and then went to the computer lab, searched for my saved files from all the days when we had class, and took pictures of the date and my name on the files for additional proof of my attendance. The head of the department asked me to meet her for a solution. I told her exactly what happened, and she said I am liable to receive attendance, and that there is no rule to maintain any summary of notes. She directs him to make the necessary changes and tells him that some action will be taken against him, hopefully a swift kick to the nuts. The next day, he tells me to come meet him privately, and I go to his chambers. He tells me that he might lose his job. Well, if you're not doing your job, you shouldn't have it. And he needs me to do him a favor and write an email that I accidentally attended the wrong classes, and it was my fault, and that he would still give me the attendance. The balls of the man asking you to do him a favor after that. I knew something was fishy before I went there, so I was already recording the conversation, and he had no idea. I still tell him, okay, and leave. The next day, I go to him and tell him that I have sent that email and request him to give me the attendance he promised. He laughs and tells me, what attendance? You mentioned in the email that you attended the wrong classes, so this is on you. You aren't getting anything. The only thing was I hadn't sent any email and I was recording this conversation too. I went straight to the dean's office with both the recordings and told her that a professor was trying to illegitimately fail me, and here was the proof. He came to the class later and started crying in front of everyone, saying that he might get fired because of me. We can only hope, sweetheart. And he wasn't fired. Well, then that school wasn't doing their job very well. But he never messed with me again, and I ended up scoring 90% in his class. I hated programming, and I still suck at it, but I had to prove a point. I bet if you had a better teacher, you'd be a lot better at it. And the second story today is Revenge on a Neighbor by Korea. So I had this neighbor, Barbara. Barbara was in her late 40s and was renting a 5-room house across the pathway from my parents' house. She lived with her 20-something son, her son's pregnant girlfriend, and her grandchild. I lived with my parents and 2 siblings and 2 adorable pups. Here is where the story gets interesting. Barbara's house threw a birthday party at 2 p.m. on a Sunday for her grandchild, and around 5 p.m. it was over. Around that time, as it's a small estate, people used the pathway to walk their dogs through the estate, and on cue the dogs ran outside and started barking. We thought nothing of it, but Barbara did. The next day, around 7 p.m., we got a knock on the door from Barbara. My mum opened the door and was confused as to why Barbara was there. Apparently, she had been up all night because the dogs kept barking. Mind you, there are many dogs around the neighborhood that bark around the same time, so for Barbara to come to our house and threaten my mum that she would call the pound was alarming to us. But Barbara left, and for a week we tried our best to keep the dogs down as we didn't want her to stir anything further up. This is where it gets bad. Barbara started yelling over the fence the minute anything got loud. From us talking and having a good time to the dogs barking. She would yell things like, "Shut your dogs up!" or, "Would you be having quiet?" etc., etc. The one that got us to start taking action was when Barbara yelled over our fence, "I'm going to come over and kill those dogs if you don't shut them up!" Here was my mistake, though. Barbara had posted about my mum on a mom's Facebook group, on how she was so rude and disrespectful when I confronted her at the door. One of my colleagues at the time told me about the post, and I commented defending my mum and what I had heard. Barbara had commented back saying, "Thank you, OP, now that I have your mum's name." I mean, they live in the same street, why would that even be hard to get? And that was the start of Barbara's abuse. She would constantly message and harass my mum. She would be messaging me about the situation, all because of the dogs. Barbara even went as low as to download an app to call our landline from a private number any time a dog barked in the neighborhood, which would blare at any time of day, and even if we didn't answer, she would call another 4 times until we did, only for the landline to be completely silent from the other end. My parents had enough, and once they realized what was presented in front of them, they knew what they had to do. First, they found out Barbara's landlord and real estate, who they were frequently contacting. They let the real estate know that they feared for their safety, as well as the dogs. They then contacted a lawyer to present a cease and desist to Barbara, who had to have this handled by the police as she slammed her door on my sisters when they tried handing it to her. They then contacted a lawyer about the restraining order on her. As her abuse became unbearable, Barbara did not attend the court hearing, so it was ruled in our favor. The icing on top of the cake, the pregnant girl who lived there just so happened to be a former colleague of mine, so I messaged her out of curiosity, and it turns out Barbara had a floor plan of our house saved. She had all the contact details of both my parents. She did download that app to call us, and she apologized on Barbara's behalf. I was thankful, and I told my parents, which helped their case tremendously. Barbara and the family ended up getting evicted, and the people that moved in after became some of my parents' greatest friends. They were able to live peacefully, and the phone calls stopped after a few months of their eviction. Moral of the story, don't mess with the dogs. Third story today is So You Want to Be Homophobic? Here, have a cookie. By Dawning Flower. So to start things off, my friend's dad, 50, male, is a character, and not in a good way. As in, think of every type of bigotry one would stereotypically associate with an old southern white man, and you'll hit the nail on the head 98% of the time. Then along comes me, then 18, female, now 22, non-binary, one of his daughter's best friends, and someone her dad, Patrick, is very aware is queer. For all of middle school and most of high school, I was the model of what he thought would be a good influence on his daughter. And because I was reserved about my identity and didn't look like a walking gay stereotype, Patrick was able to pretend for years that part of me didn't exist. An unsaid tolerance of me while Patrick pushed his daughter to take on more approved traits. Needless to say, that tolerance ended when I had cut my hair short for the first time, and Patrick was unable to overlook the constant visual reminder that I wasn't the ideal straight white girl he wanted his daughter to be friends with. Now, he never said anything to my face, as he's more the type to say something behind someone's back instead. Rather, he had aired his complaints to the rest of his family, with particular focus on pushing his displeasure onto my friend. He had demanded that she stop being friends with me, as obviously I was someone who would just corrupt his only daughter. how my now short hair would only confuse her and trick her into kissing other girls. Heaven forbid I bring my friend lunch once in a blue moon, because of course the only explanation for me doing that was because I want to get into her pants. Apparently the way into a girl's pants is sandwiches. I never knew this. I'll file that away. For all it matters, I'm Arrow Ace. I literally only exist for friendships and friendships only. Each time my friend would rant to me about how her dad would go off on a rant to her or the rest of her family for us simply being friends, my annoyance would slowly grow. If he had a problem with it, then it's me he should take his grievances out on. My friend shouldn't be the one getting all the flack for me simply existing. No one should be getting flack for that. But the thing is, I couldn't be confrontational about it. Firstly, because I'm a very docile person, and it goes against my very nature to be aggressive in any form. Secondly, I didn't know how a confrontation would affect things, but I knew for certain that I couldn't let him have any more ammo to use against my friend. So, of course, it meant a more nuanced approach. You know, while not initially on purpose, it's remarkably easy to become friends with all his sons. Be kind and patient to his oldest, play D&D with his second, and match the jabs and banter with the youngest. When you also become close with Patrick's wife, when you take everyone out of his corner and place it in your own, with them at your side, why would they ever hold a negative opinion of you in the first place? He could rant all he wanted, but they wouldn't turn against you despite their own beliefs. But of course, that's not all. While he talked behind my back, I pretended I was none the wiser. Every time he and I talked while I was over, I was polite, well-spoken, and careful with my words so that nothing I said or did could ever be taken in a negative light. For why would anyone ever have an issue with someone as well-behaved as I? The final piece comes in at the tail end of my senior year of high school, which coincidentally lined up with Patrick's birthday. I knew Patrick had a particular love for a specific type of chocolate chip cookie, but unfortunately the cookie store he buys it from is about 40 minutes away. Luckily for me, I just so happened to be taking culinary classes at the time, knew a copycat recipe for the cookie, and had free reign of my school's kitchen for the final week. So what do? I make him a inconveniently big batch of 48 large homemade chocolate chip cookies for his birthday. So not only do I have the adoration of his wife, the friendship of all his children, and a clean record of nothing else to use as ammo against me, but now he also seems like a flat-out a-hole for even saying anything negative about the person who made him cookies for his birthday. After far too long, from what I was told, his wife laid into him for making another negative comment about me after his birthday. After some false kindness and much frustration over the years, I have yet to hear much more or any comments regarding our friendship, and hopefully it stays that way. And fourth story for today is Workplace Revenge by Ugly Mates. Worked in a large office with multiple departments. Each department could choose whether they wanted to have flexi time or not. Most chose to have this option. The core hours were 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., so everyone needed to be in the office during this time. The phone lines were open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So long as there was phone cover for the hour before and the hour after core time, no one minded how people managed their flexi. Living the furthest away, I chose, after making sure it was okay, to come in at 8 a.m. every day and leave at 4 p.m., so that I could avoid the worst of rush hour traffic. I had been working these hours for the better part of 4 years, and no one had a problem with it, until I changed departments. Despite there always being cover up until 6 p.m. most days, office was open 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., my coworkers had a problem with me being the only one leaving at 4. They complained constantly to the department manager. He gave them the option of leaving early if they wanted, setting up a rota of people leaving early. Basically any workable solution that was feasibly possible. Nope, nothing was acceptable. None of my coworkers wanted to leave early, unless there was an emergency, a doctor's appointment, etc. So if they chose to stay until 5 p.m., then I should also fit in with the team and do the same. Exhausted, My manager spoke to me and said he tried everything. Have you tried telling them to shut the hell up? But they just wouldn't back down. Some people just need to be told to shut the hell up. I asked if I could move to another department that didn't mind me leaving it for, but he gave me a piece of information which made me smile, and I decided to stay. I asked if he wouldn't mind batting them off for a couple more weeks because I had a plan. Team meeting was held after a couple of weeks to discuss working hours, and I sat back and allowed my co-workers to get themselves worked up. I decided to throw in a few comments here and there to rile them up some more, and when I thought it was the right moment, I held my hands up and conceded defeat. I asked the team if they prefer I work 9 to 5. They all agreed. Giving a quick look to my manager, I repeated that we should all work the same hours, considering their argument was that I was the only one leaving early. Unanimous agreement. Huzzah! So I suggested that we should all, as a team, work 9 to 5. Enthusiastic nodding. Starting from tomorrow. Silence. My manager spoke up saying that was a wonderful idea and was a brilliant solution. He'd put it in place immediately, so that we would all come off flexi time and as a department all work the same hours, which is what the team wanted in the first place. Now is a good time to mention that there was a worldwide sporting event taking place at the time. Living in the UK but not being British, I didn't feel the need to follow the UK teams. Living in the UK and being British, I also don't follow the UK teams. The event was being held abroad, so due to time differences, some of the games were playing in the morning, UK time, meaning that my co-workers could watch the games and still be at work by 10 a.m. I piped up to remind my team that I would no longer be the only one covering the phones from 9 to 10, and whew, yes, they conveniently forgot that they left me to answer the phones for that hour pretty much every day since me starting on the team. What a relief, because the phones did get busy first thing in the morning. One colleague tried to speak up, but my manager reminded them that this is what they've been asking for all along, that the whole team worked the same hours. Oh yes, this was also the time to mention that seeing as I couldn't leave early anymore, there was no need to work through my lunch break, something I offered to placate them, and I didn't used to have lunch that often back then. Flexi meant that people had the choice to take 2 hours for lunch, and I'd offered to cover the phones when the games were on. So I'd stopped doing that. Otherwise I'd be worn out working flat until 5. That meant that the quarter and semi-finals they had planned to watch, which so happened to be played over UK lunchtime, and our office were showing on the large screen in the main conference room, would only have a restricted viewing time of 1 hour now. I announced that I could see I was being selfish for being the only one to leave early, and I was pleased to fit in with everyone else by working 9 to 5. That also meant that I wouldn't be signing off the payments from the previous day, something I would do between 8 and 9 when it was nice and quiet, albeit that I chose to not remind them of that, but I did like seeing the look on their faces when they realized they had extra work to do the following morning. Work that they should have been doing in the first instance. Again, something I volunteered to do to try to placate them. Oh, and that information that my manager gave me in our meeting 2 weeks prior. In a cost-cutting exercise, my office was relocating to another one, which happened to be a lot closer to where I lived. So, ultimately, the removal of flexi time worked in my favor, as it meant I could then walk to and from work. Oh, it was difficult not to pull a smug face when the relocation was announced. I think the British term "don't piss on your chips" definitely applied here. And the fifth and final story for today is Fun Story from Comp USA by Evil Alchemist. Back in 2004-ish, I used to be the front-end manager at Comp USA. As the name suggests, they sold computer hardware and software. I was over all the cashiers, front-end supervisors, and door security staff. During one of our monthly meetings, the operations manager, Jeff, brought up the fact that I was not having my staff mention all the various things that CompUSA wanted to upsell on. This included meeting the store manager, Tim, sales manager, tech manager, Mike, and operations manager, Jeff. I reminded the group that I was having my staff focus on what I thought they could sell during that particular transaction. There was no need to mention other services that did not apply to that purchase, and it made the transactions go faster and smoother. My best friend and roommate Mike, who was also the tech manager, backed me up, as he used to be the front-end manager before I took over. Of course, Jeff kept making me look bad to the group, and then the sales manager started blaming me for the lower-than-expected numbers. The numbers were slightly above target on multiple fronts, but some were lower than they wanted on others. Some things were just hard to sell. After being the punching bag for a while, I said, "Fine," and had a talk with my staff to cover everything they wanted. The next day, every cashier was offering replacement plans, store credit cards, training classes, in-home installations, and AOL sign-ups for every transaction. Credit cards and AOL sign-ups required the cashier to walk the customer to another terminal to sign up, taking about 3 to 5 minutes. This caused the lines to check out and to slow to a crawl, and the sales manager noticed immediately. His staff were stuck waiting in line with customers so they could get credit for the sale, and they could not leave laptops and high-end hardware with customers before they paid. This lasted about a week, before they told me I could go back to the system I had before, offer what matched what the customer needed with the product they were purchasing. Now, several months passed, and the store manager came up with an incentive program to increase add-on sales. Staff would get a store credit for every add-on they sold. We already got a commission for these, and this was on top of that, so win-win. For example, for every AOL sign-up, we would get $10 off in-store credit. Replacement plan, $5 to $20, depending on price. Credit card approval, $10. The store manager made up fake currency called Timbucks, oh dear, with his face on it, and he signed each one to prevent fraud. Well, I guess if you need toilet paper. I had a good staff, and I was darn good at selling these too. I spent most of my day on the register already, so I just kept making my sales numbers. I did try a little harder, because who does not want free stuff? After about a month, I had over 1,500 in store credit. I decided it was time to buy some new hardware for myself, and had one awesome gaming setup for the time. A week later, I get a call from Mike that corporate security was at the store, and Jeff had been accusing me of stealing all this stuff. I got dressed and came into work early. I was greeted by Mike when I arrived, and he filled me in on all the crazy stuff that had been said by Jeff. Mike walked me over to the cash office, my office, where the corporate people were. They were pleasant at first, but then asked me about all the merchandise I had rang up at $0 through the register. I explained that I had earned that much in store credit that I had used to purchase the items I wanted. I'm guessing the amount purchased at once, and the amount is what flagged it for Jeff when he ran the morning reports. Jeff could have asked me about it, but nope, he just assumed that I had stolen it, and that I was dumb enough to ring it through the register system. So I'm sitting there smirking, and Mike knows exactly what I'm about to do. I roll over to my filing cabinet and pull out my employee purchase folder. Every employee purchase had to have a copy of the sales receipt kept on file. In my file is a copy of every receipt with the Timbucks attached to the ones that needed it. They took my folder to the store manager's office to compare my Timbucks to the list he had kept of each one he issued. 20 minutes at least. They came out, and corporate security asked me to come back into the cash office. They said every transaction I did was legit, and it was good I had such a detailed documentation for every employee purchase. I knew everything was good, but I was just in shock I was being accused of theft. Well, since corporate was in town anyways, they said they were taking all the managers out for lunch, their treat. Mike and I were standing in the front end and excited for some free food. Plus, I was not even scheduled to work for 2 more hours, so I had free time to spare. Jeff walked up front, kinda not wanting to look at me, and said, "You can't go. You have to watch the store." I thought that was horse crap. Especially after what had just went down. I was not even scheduled to work yet. Mike thought so too, and he knew me well enough to know I was hatching a plan. and all the managers came up front. Near the exit doors, my rage level went to 100, and I did what I had to do. I walked in front of the registers where we had all the top-selling PC games, World of Warcraft, Star Wars Galaxies, Doom 3, Half-Life, etc. I opened my arms wide, scooped up as many as I could, walked over to the front doors, which had security sensors, and threw all the boxes into the vestibule. I turned toward all the other managers in corporate, who were stunned at what I just did. They were speechless and trying to find words to explain the situation. I locked eyes with corporate security and said, PC games over $50 are required to have anti-theft tags on them. I don't think any of those do, because the alarm never went off as 30 boxes flew past them on their way to the door. I just walked away from the area and could hear Mike laughing his butt off while corporate security was putting 2 and 2 together. I went out to smoke while Jeff picked up the games on the floor, and the rest went to lunch. Without him. After lunch, they did an audit on all the items that did not have security tags. It was Jeff's job to make sure the correct items had those tags. Guessing there was more than just those games that were not tagged, because that audit took a few days. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Big thanks to everyone who allowed me to use their stories. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by signing up for my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. $1 or more a month gets you early access to the videos on Monday. There's also a link to my merchandise store on Teespring. Let me think. Oh yes, there's also the Discord and a few other social media links if you want to take a look at those. And before we go, let's have Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... We'll tag on to the last story there. Those of you who play video games, is there a video game that you want to play but haven't gotten around to playing yet for whatever reason? For example, Steam, very, very naughty. Keep sending me emails pointing out that Arizona Sunshine 2, which is a VR game, is on sale. And it's on sale at a good discount, but I have to be strong because I can't be buying any more games right now because I've got games I haven't even played. And there's only a couple that I do kind of play occasionally, which I'm not even really bothering at the moment, so I can't justify spending money on new games. But let me know what you think in a comment below, and before we go, we'll take a look at the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Revenge's Ice Cream for 30, and this was about useless tools. You know, things you bought seemed like a good idea at the time, but you don't really have a use for it. And today's answer comes from Revenge's Ice Cream 430 and is from Raven Fox. A 2-foot long tire iron that ends in a sharp point. So unless I decide to rupture a tire or there's a zombie apocalypse, this thing's useless. I wouldn't swear off the zombie apocalypse. You never know. Stranger things have happened. And that brings us to the end of today's video. So until next time, thank you very much for watching and take very good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.